People in the US always want to live in Europe and vice versa. Here's my hot take on this.
We've covered so many times on this channel Americans traveling to Europe and realizing that Europe is built entirely different. While there can be some similarities in some aspects of the sort, as we've seen very recently, there is a stark contrast between America and Europe. So if you guys are new to the channel, welcome. If you guys are returning viewers, welcome back. Before we get started, make sure you like the video and subscribe if you haven't already.
Since I'm American and live in Norway, people ask me all the time, what is the best thing about living in Europe? Well, if I had to choose one thing, I would say the travel. Because, for example, I'm in Oslo right now, right? You take a quick train, 20 minutes, to the airport. Then you just hop on a plane. You're in Austria. Look at that right there. That is St. Stephen's Cathedral. But did you know, only 1 hour away from Vienna, and for the cost of only $10, you can get a bus ticket to Bratislava, Slovakia. Bratislava is tough, but then for $20, you can go to Prague and be in the Czech Republic. This area is called Václavský náměstí. Oh my God, if you're Czech, please don't get mad at me for butchering that, but you know, I don't speak Czech. But this is where everything is popping at nighttime. You got the duplex rooftop club down here at the other end. Also in Prague is the world's oldest anatomical clock. Got parts and pieces that are over, I don't know, 400 or 500 years old. It's something like that. And then after the Czech Republic, it's just a short flight back to Norway, where I am in Bergen.
That's absolutely incredible. Honestly, that's one of the cool things about being in Europe in general, right? A while ago, I heard from some friends, they're like, hey, you do realize when you live in Europe, traveling to any European country is relatively cheap, very cheap. You take a train, a flight is maybe 150 bucks tops, and you can get literally anywhere in Europe for the cheap. It's crazy because that's not the same case in the United States. You can fly from one end of the United States to another end of the United States, and it is incredibly expensive. Flying within the country of the US, like it's wild. So to hear such cheap prices, my only question to you guys is how is it so cheap? How are the trains cheap? Because I remember taking the Amtrak from Illinois to, I forgot what state I took it to, but I remember I paid about $200-300 bucks to cross 2 different states. I know in Europe it's not entirely like that. It's a lot cheaper to travel from one country to another country and in relatively the same distance. And I'm like, what? How does that work? I thought for sure travel would have been at least a tad bit more expensive, or at least on par between Europe and the United States. But I guess I'm wrong and you guys are incredibly lucky. I hope eventually America gets it together and we can have a benefit like that, because it seems so cool to be able to travel from one country that has entirely different cultures and festivities and whatnot to an entirely different country with different languages, cultures, food, festivities as well. To me, that's incredible and it's very enriching. There were a lot of comments obviously about this, and our first comment says, getting around in Europe to great places is wonderful. Trains and planes for little money is crazy. That's what I'm saying. I could not believe that. In my head, before I ever traveled to Europe at all, I'm like, okay, if I ever wanted to branch outside of Germany and stuff and travel to any other country, it's probably going to cost me an arm, a leg, and a goat sacrifice. But I was comparing traveling within the United States to traveling within Europe, because I'm like, okay, the surface area looks a little bit similar. One place might be a little bit bigger than the other place, but generally speaking, I would assume that traveling to different foreign countries and stuff would be the same as traveling to different states within the United States. Makes sense, but I guess it doesn't. It takes over 20 hours to drive through Texas, right? It damn near takes a full day. Depending on how you drive through Texas too, it could take you 3 days. To think that you can have all of that travel experience in Europe for a very affordable price is diabolical. But let me know what you guys have observed in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from you guys.
Moving to Europe gave me a significantly higher quality of life. Here's why. About 3 years ago, I was a college grad making around $80K base salary in New York City. I was living in a 4-bedroom apartment in downtown Manhattan that I shared with 3 other strangers. And I had the opportunity to move to Paris, which at first I was very hesitant about, because if you know anything about the European job market, if you compare it to New York salaries, the salaries are a huge cut. But I said, fuck it. And I took the job even though it was a lower salary, and it was probably the best decision I've ever made. Cost of living is much lower in Europe. So despite the salary being lower, I was able to go from a shared 4-bedroom apartment to having my own 1-bedroom apartment in central Paris.
See, that's a really big thing that I've noticed. A lot of people who are like, well, James, obviously America has higher paying jobs, so why are you complaining? And I'm like, they're like, oh, Europe, you have to pay a ton of taxes. Why would you want to pay a ton of taxes? And I'm like, well, why would you want healthcare? Why do you complain about your expensive hospital bills? Why do you complain about your erroneous student debt? The result of people paying a shit ton of taxes is hopefully the government allocates those resources to its people so they are able to function efficiently. So even though there are lower salaries in Europe, the cost of living is obviously low, so you can survive and live comfortably in Europe with a lower salary than in the United States with a higher salary. I mean, it's not uncommon to hear people making like $80,000 to $100,000 and still struggle to live day to day because everything around them is very expensive. That's a normalcy in America, unfortunately, because everything's expensive and the economy is tanking. So
on top of that, the additional paid vacation time is just insane. I went from 3 weeks of paid time off in New York City to having 7 weeks legal minimum paid time off in Paris. And with the proximity to all of the other European countries, it's so easy to go on endless weekend trips around Europe at your leisure. Also, if you're a foodie and you love going out to eat was not a possibility for me when I was a new grad in New York. It was just too expensive. I would limit it to the weekends. But going out to eat in Paris is something that is you can affordably do multiple times a week. On average, a nice meal out with your friends will put you at 30 euros, including a cocktail. And keep in mind, there's no tipping here. And so the 20% tip that's required in the US makes a huge difference on the total price that you pay at the end of your meal. And last but not least, I think that it was a lot easier for me to make friends in Paris as an American than it was for me moving to New York from California. It may sound counterintuitive, but being a foreigner moving to Europe, it was a lot easier of a conversation starter and made it easier for me to meet new friends than it was coming from California to New York. Also, when you're a foreigner, the expat community is so strong, and once you've infiltrated it, it's just so easy to make friendships because you have this point in common. So if you're hesitating, I highly recommend you make the move.
lots of very great points made in this video, and one of the really good points I loved is obviously the wonderful food and the fact that when you go to restaurants, it's significantly cheaper in Europe than it is in the United States, mainly because you don't have to pay the 20% gratuity when you're eating. America has a vicious tipping problem, and you can look this up all over the internet. Everyone in the United States is absolutely sick and tired of it. Sick and tired. In fact, there's been almost a revolution of people not tipping in hopes to push corporations to include the gratuity inside of the menu items so that when people go, they don't have to worry about tipping at all. And if they do decide to tip, it's from the bottom of their hearts and not out of pity. Another interesting point that she brought up that I was like, whoa, I never thought of it that way. She said it's easier for her to make friends in a foreign country, basically like for her in this case, Paris, than it was for her traveling from California to New York, right? I'm not sure if you guys knew this, but New Yorkers are notorious for being real mean. Honestly, the eastern side of the United States is notorious for being very mean. And then the western side of the United States, people are a lot nicer. That's the general stereotype. Something I noticed traveling, she made a very good point about the expat community, because I myself have been traveling for the last 3 going on 4 years. And when you meet other fellow travelers across the world, you will have 20 times of a easier and tighter bond with them than someone living in the United States for sure. Because everybody in the United States, it's like, okay, cool, we're in our comfort zone. There's a strong sense of individualism, so people kind of just do their own thing. They don't really have regards for other people. And you would think that people kind kind of band together in the United States, but especially right now where everybody is more divided than ever, it's crazy to see expat communities so close overseas. It's really cool. It's fun. I mean, I got to witness that since my recent travels because you guys are able to relate on a fundamental level. But I'll give you a very good example. In America right now, they're trying to reignite division and a bunch of different divisions in different ways, but I'll just use the race division issue. Very divided. Boom, right? Not everybody, but a large chunk of people in the media is pushing a certain narrative. So it's caused some tensions. But if you travel overseas and you meet anybody that comes from the United States, they could be black, white, everything in between. People don't see you for the color of your skin. And what's interesting is the people from the same country you reside in, right? Other fellow Americans from my perspective, right? They don't see you for your color. They see you as being an American, finally. And you unite over that. You're like, oh, okay, cool. What's up, man? Like, what brought you out here? What part of America are you from? Blah, 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 blah. And you bond so tight, which is why I've been emphasizing in my videos, I do feel like people need to travel outside of the United States so they can escape the bubble that is very apparent out there. Now, we have a comment from the comment section which says, couldn't leave my 24-hour gas stations, I'm sorry. Are you fucking kidding me? Really? You can't leave your 24-hour gas stations for like a few days? She's not saying move out there. I mean, maybe you can infer from what she was saying to move out to Europe. You don't have to move out there, but you can at least travel and stay there for a week or so and get to see what she's talking about, right? Maybe you might be able to let them things go. Absolutely right. I'm in New York for vacation. Prices are ridiculously high. Food is of the worst quality and the quality of life is low and people don't realize it. Especially New York is very telling when it comes to stuff like that, right? Prices are crazy high for items and assets that are a fraction of the price in Europe and of higher quality, particularly food. Clothes are another thing as well, and even other activities and whatnot as well. It's very sad, bro. Like, honestly, pathetic. But right now, I would highly encourage to, reserve those vacations for until things die down a little bit in the United States. We're in a bit of a struggle phase right now. Perks of living in Europe in the summer. I've made this point so many times. AC, 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 and the lack thereof throughout Europe. Now, I did notice that depending on the country that you're in, some countries actually do have AC. Some places within the countries that don't have AC in Europe actually have AC, but it's very expensive. It's very expensive. So there are other things you can do to circumvent that. If you really want to cool down, you could go for a swim. Go swim. Like I said, go swim. Hope butter won't melt. Well,
3 lesser known benefits of living in France. So yes, Paris, in my opinion, is the best city in the world. It's unbelievably beautiful. There's tons of historical architecture and museums, some of the best in the world. Culturally speaking, there's always something to do. We have picnic culture. We're in the dead center of Europe, so traveling around is really easy. The food, the wine, the cheese, you get it. But beyond that, there's benefits to your life that come with living in France. And I'm not just talking about healthcare. Yes, we know that everyone that lives here is entitled to national healthcare and that medicine and just any sort of medical care is incredibly affordable here. And if you don't have income, they will cover it for you. But there's more. So I'm going to tell you 3 of them right now. The first one is something called CAF, which is Caisse des Allocations Familiales. Essentially, it's a part of the government that gives assistance to low-income families. Some of the services included are going to be services for young children, family allowance, school grants, housing benefits, moving grants, supplementary benefits. France will provide financial benefits for families that come from low income, kind of similar to like our WIC or welfare programs. But on top of this, they have grants available to help offset the costs of giving birth. And this includes the costs associated with adoption. But on top of this, they will pay students. So if you are a full-time student and you are full-time residing in France and you're making under a certain threshold of income, they will give you a stipend every month. One of my friends who was also an au pair at the same time as I was an au pair, her and her husband, well, they weren't married, her and her fiance at the time, they were receiving CAF benefits. And it's meant to like help you pay for your apartment and help you offset the cost of life because they're like, we get it. Being a student is hard. How cool is that? So that's the first one. The second one, and I don't know if this exists in the US, at least it didn't exist in Massachusetts where I'm from. In France, it's illegal to evict one of your tenants between the months of, I want to say it's October until March or October until February, simply because they said it's too cold. So it's not lawful to evict a tenant during the cold months because you can't put people out on the streets during those months. I love that. Side note, this isn't a benefit, but I just want to add it. It's also illegal in France for them to deny you an apartment for having a pet. They're not even allowed to ask you if you have a pet. So like in the US, this is a huge deal. If you have a cat or a dog and you're trying to rent, you have to be like, oh my God, do they accept pets? And if they do accept pets, there might be some crazy fees and like people are hiding their animals. In France, they're not even allowed to ask. So like when my friend Dominique moved here, she was like, what do I do about my dog? And I was like, you don't even have to bring it up. You literally don't even have to bring it up. They're not even allowed to ask you. Isn't that crazy? That's crazy. I think that's amazing. We don't talk about this enough. And lastly, the third benefit is chômage. So if you work full-time in France and you have a CDI, which I've mentioned several times, that's a permanent contract, right? If you're working full-time in France and you lose your job, like you're terminated or you're laid off, whatever, you can qualify for chômage. That is our unemployment. But here's the thing with France's chômage. While you're employed, you're paying into it. Like when I was employed, I was paying into it, right? For your first year, I believe, no, I'm wrong. For your first 2 years of being on chômage, you were entitled to 80% of whatever your salary was. I'm gonna let that sink in for a minute. So say I was working at a company and I was making 100,000 and then I lose my job. If I go and sign up for chômage, which I almost did, and then I was like, no, I'm gonna be an influencer. I almost signed up for it. I would then get 80,000 for 2 years. And then after the 2 years, I'm still entitled to get it, but it goes down. It's a smaller amount. Now, obviously, it's not so simple as like you get fired, you walk in and you're like, pay me. Like you have to show that you're trying to get a job. You have to like, because I almost signed up for it. There's like certain steps you have to take. Like you have to send in your resume and you have to like prove that you're like making an honest effort to kind of try to get a job. But this is a benefit that this doesn't exist anywhere else, I swear. I know people who have like purposely taken chômage to work on other projects because they're allowed to, and they've paid into it. They've paid into it the whole time that they're working. Do you get what I mean? So it's something that honestly, several people, it's French people, several French people that I know have taken advantage of chômage because they're like, well, I'm going to use this to work on my own side projects, and they're still earning 80% of their salary, which is really, really good, at the same time as working on their projects or launching their business or whatever it is. Bonus points, because I almost did this, if you're entitled to chômage and you want to start a business, you're actually able to get half of that amount up front. So like if I was going to do chômage, say I was going to get 80,000 in 1 year, they could set it up in a way, it's called l'ARCRE, ARCRE, I don't know, someone's going to correct me in the comments. I could have signed up to do this thing where I would get 40,000 of it up front to kickstart my business and then get the second half 6 months later towards the business. So you have to like go in with a business plan, but you're basically like, hey, I'm going to take that chômage, but I'm going to use it towards this business that I'm creating. You have to show your business plan. But like, this is possible. That's really, really incredible. That does not exist anywhere else that I'm aware of. Although I'm going to be real, I don't know anything about like what's going on in Spain and Germany. So I don't know what I'm talking about. But isn't that really cool? And then you throw in the healthcare on top of it and it's just, it's amazing.
Chômage is interesting because I feel like there's more that is left out from what she's saying. So I do have to do more research into that. In fact, people who are living in France, can you verify what she just said? Is that really a thing? Because I feel like maybe there's more to it. Because it does sound like something like the welfare system in America a tad bit. Our system is very flawed, but basically if you can prove that you're looking for a job, then you'll receive some type of wage, I guess, monthly. It's very, very, very low, to be honest, but you have to be able to show the unemployment office that you're looking for a job and that you have intentions of working, and there has to be a concerted effort and they need to be able to verify that. So I'm not sure how accurate that was on her part, because it did seem like, I mean, obviously she highlighted a lot of the benefits of that, which does sound great. It sounds tantalizing, but I do feel like there's some information missing there. So I'll take that with a grain of salt. Please inform me in the comments down below, but I do want to talk about something else she brought up, which is that rule about tenants not being able to be evicted from their homes between the months of October and like February or something like that, because it's too cold. That sounds like a nightmare for landlords. Now, I've been on both sides of the fence. I've rented places and I have been a landlord before, and I've had amazing tenants. I actually make sure that whoever decides to rent from me gets the best experience possible and whatnot. But there is a huge issue, especially now in the United States, where people will squat inside of apartments, which basically means they'll stay inside of an apartment and not pay rent at all. And that takes the cost cost of the place and puts it on the landlord. And I mean, it's not like it's a free property from the government. It's a place that an individual has decided to put on the market for rent. And I do think that that could pose to be somewhat of a financial nightmare, probably for landlords out there in France. So if I'm wrong on that, let me know. But it does seem like, I don't know, that gave me the heebie-jeebies a little bit. I'm like, ooh, that don't sound too good. I guess my question is, because she didn't say that you were absolved from paying. What happens if you do not pay your rent for like 4 or 5 months back to back to back during the months of October through February? Can they evict you then, or do they have to wait it out and then bill you at the very end? And if you don't pay that bill, you get jailed or something. Like, how does that work? I don't know. Let me know in the comments down below. And our first comment says, that's not quite right. It's 80% up to a ceiling around 50,000 euro. Oh, see, that's what I'm saying. With the chômage thing, I knew that there was more to it than leading on to believe, because it did seem like it was too good to be true. And it literally was too good to be true. So crazy in the US, if you want to leave your lease early, they can require you to pay all of the remaining months. Here, you just need to give notice. I did notice that. The thing is, in the lease, you have to sign a lease. Every lease is different in the United States, but generally speaking, in most leases, if you do decide to leave early, you do need to pay the remaining time that you were going to be staying in that apartment, and you can't just leave without paying. But that is detailed in the lease, and it's very clear. But there are other leases where you pay month to month, or there's other leases that allow you to give a notice, an early notice, and you can get out of paying the rest of the time that you've signed for the lease. So it just depends on what type of lease you have in the United States and where you're located and what the rules are, because I thought maybe everybody was aware of this, but each state in the United States functions differently than the next state over. So it's almost like each state functions like an independent country low-key, because they have their own rules and regulations, but they're also governed by federal rules and regulations as well. So how you navigate and purchase a house in Colorado is going to be entirely different than how you navigate and purchase a house in Florida, and how the rental processes are in those two respective states, just for an example. But how does that sound to you guys? Does that sound strange? Does it sound weird?
When I moved abroad to immigrate to Portugal, I was not prepared for the number of times people would ask me why I moved to Portugal, why I left the US. I get asked this question more than any other question, and quite frankly, I find it to be incredibly uninteresting. And I tell people that now. Before, I used to go into the whole spiel, but after answering it like thousands of times, I just don't have the capacity or the desire or the will. It's like, look at me. Why do you think I left America? And it's always other Americans that have asked me this the most. And it's like, come on, guys.
That's a very valid question to ask. Why did you decide to move to Portugal? Aside from the obvious, right? Like, America is crazy right now, so moving to Portugal doesn't sound that wild. But there could be other reasons, like why Portugal and not another country? Why Portugal? That's not a crazy question. She seems real uptight, you know what I mean? Portuguese American who would love to do the same. And I get the reason wholeheartedly. Yes. Obviously, America is crazy right now. So I do understand why people move from America to other countries worldwide. But the question still remains, why Portugal and not anywhere else? You know what I'm saying? I just don't understand why that was like an annoying question. I mean, yeah, I guess maybe people ask that question too much or something, but I think people are more curious as to how they can make a similar decision, but in regards to, okay, they have better job opportunities here, better quality of life in the location you chose to move to, other than like, okay, did you leave America because it's bad, or did you leave America? And they're not asking why you left America. They're asking why you moved to Portugal specifically. I think that the reason why you are asked that question is because Portugal is a very poor country when compared to the US. There are small pockets of wealth here and there, but Portugal is sadly Western Europe's poorest country. So why would you move to a poor country? I think that's the reason why you get asked about it a lot. And that's what I'm saying, like, bro, like, read the room. Why would you ask me that question? And I'm like, bro, what do you mean, why would anybody ask you that question? You chose the poorest country in Europe. Was there something that we are just not clocking? We don't know, because I didn't even know Portugal was the poorest country in Europe until I read this comment. So why? Like, we're curious, because when making a decision to move anywhere, right, doing some research and figuring out where people have the biggest satisfaction when they move, I think that is reasonable. That's reasonable. Getting like an overall consensus, okay, this area, you might not want to move here, you can visit, but you might not want to move here. Maybe this other area you can move to and live a better life. It doesn't have as many activities, but overall quality of life is better here. I think that's a very reasonable question from random people. I guess disregard everything I said. What do you guys think?
In Lithuania, guys, they give you free potassium iodide pills because at any point we might either get nuked or the Belarusian nuclear reactor right next to our capital might malfunction and explode. So in case of a nuclear emergency, you can pick up potassium iodide pills, guys.
Europe is built different. I'm not sure. I don't know, right? Because I know we have nuclear places in the United States. I'm just not sure if the people in those areas get the same type of treatment and stuff. I would assume that there has to be some responsibility that the nuclear sites assume where people live in close proximity to a possible catastrophe that could pop off at any time. So that's interesting. I didn't know that. That's a cool fun fact. Hold up. Is it also a thing in Latvia? Because I'm paranoid as hell. I'd pick up some tomorrow. I hope there is a location like that in Latvia where you guys can pick up something, because that does sound diabolical if anything were to happen. This is literally everywhere in the world near a nuclear area. Where I grew up in England had it, and schools had it. It was just everywhere. It's not special. It's a normal thing to have for public safety. Again, I don't think that is entirely true, because there's some things that I think should be in place for public safety. For instance, I mean, we had that Flint, Michigan issue with the water being tainted. And I think that was a direct correlation with the fracking that was happening in the area. And people wound up dying from poisoned water that never really got fixed. So that's very interesting that you say that, because I do think that America, unfortunately, in that regard, does lack the capacity to do things like that. Because if it doesn't profit America in some way, shape, or form, then why would they give out medication for free when healthcare already costs an arm, leg, and a goat sacrifice?
So I've been living in Amsterdam for about 6 weeks now, and I feel fucking rejuvenated. And I just figured out why. It's because of this. Living this close to water as part of my daily routine has me like physically, emotionally, fucking spiritually refreshed. Now, I lived in New York City for about 11 years, so I will give New Amsterdam a little bit of props here. You can definitely feel alive in that city. Mostly thanks to cocaine and the constant fear of being chest kicked 300 style in front of an oncoming 6 train. But something about this just feels so pure. It's kind of hard to describe. The best way I can put it is using video games. Now, I'm a huge gamer. I fucking love Dark Souls. I can talk about that shit for hours. And if you've played a game like that before, you know the concept of having like a magic or mana bar. So if I get within like 20 meters, and yes, I use meters now. If I get that close to water, I just feel myself powering up. It's like a constant passive buff. So if you're one of my former countrymen still stuck in a concrete shitbox, please do yourself a favor and get near some water.
That's an interesting point. I remember when I traveled to Hamburg, Germany, I absolutely loved the fact that it was a port city. You know, there was so much water, the canals were beautiful, and the architecture amazing. But the biggest thing that I thought went hand in hand was the water and the city. I mean, it's a port city, so of course it's gonna have a massive body of water, and it looked so beautiful. It didn't matter what was going on or what part of the city I was at, I felt recharged. And so I completely get what he's saying. But I think the same can be said in the United States where you live by, you know, port cities and stuff, where you live in a port city where you are around a bunch of water, or you are in a city that's close to a beach where there is a huge body of water there. I do feel like generally the vibes are a lot higher in an area like that versus an area that is not close to a body of water. So if you guys agree, let me know in the comments down below. Yes, water is amazingly powerful on so many levels. I absolutely agree. Listen, if you are feeling depressed and it's rainy outside, whatever, and you're by a body of water, I think for some reason that just changes everything. But again, I could be wrong. That could just be personal preference. I actually don't really mind not being around bodies of water, but I do notice a significant internal positivity increase when I am around bodies of water versus when I'm not. There is scientific proof that large bodies of water are good for our souls, but being out of toxic environments is nothing to sneeze at either. I'm not sure why people are so upset that you moved. It's very odd, but I'm thinking it's a good reminder of why you left. Enjoy your summer by the water. Yeah, a lot of people who wind up leaving the United States, I forgot about this, get flack for leaving. Like, why did you leave? You're in the greatest country ever. Why did you decide to leave? And I'm like, turn on the news right now. Just look at any article this year from the United States, like right now. We can leave it at that. And that is reason enough to just get out and travel and explore. But what do you guys think about that?
To a concert in Brussels the other day. A few weeks before the concert, I got an email from the concert venue, which included information about how to get there, practical info, blah, blah, blah. And part of the information was a code, which was for me to pick up a free event pass for any public transportation. So all I had to do was go to a machine inside of a metro station, I think probably also at tram stops, press the event code button and type in that code, and I got a free pass, which lasted for the entirety of the day of the event. A few days later, I went to Luxembourg, where I had never been, so I just went for the day, and then I flew out from the airport there. Did you know that in Luxembourg, all of the public transportation is 100% free? You know how like on those longer buses that have multiple doors, you can't get onto the back doors because you have to always go in the front to make sure that you're paying for your ride in most cities? In Luxembourg, you can just get into any door because it's all free. I walked for several hours around Luxembourg, and Luxembourg is like an up and down city, so I was like pretty tired, so I just wanted to take a bus one stop, and so I did for free. And then I took another bus to the airport, which is a ride that most cities charge a hefty premium for because they know they can. In Luxembourg, it was also free. It's not that hard. Life doesn't have to always be so incredibly unaffordable and expensive. We all pay taxes everywhere in the world. We should be getting things for them.
Yeah, so I actually think that that's an interesting thing that Germany does as well. When I was in Germany for Gamescom, I think when you bought your tickets, there's like codes you can scan to get on some of the transportation, I think, for free as well. That also applies to other concert things or venue, whatever. It's like a perk as part of like you paying for you attending different places. So I could have that wrong, but if I remember correctly, you either got a discounted price for riding the train or riding the train to that particular location was free. Now, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but that's the impression I got when I purchased the ticket for Gamescom. So wonderful experience, absolutely loved it, and I do want to go back to Gamescom next year in Germany. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. And I'm not sure how common this is in Europe either, because some countries have it and I'm not sure if others don't, you know? So I can't really for sure say that that would be a definitive perk if only a few countries have it. But I'm going to go ahead and assume that a lot of European countries do have this as a perk if you do decide to go to concerts or events and whatnot that are attached to public transportation, and then maybe that public transportation is free or discounted because you purchased your ticket and they, you know, worked out something with the railway or whatever. Does sound cool, but let's get into these comments. Our first comment says, "This is why we are less free than anywhere else. We didn't have freedom. They do." And the funny thing is, I know a lot of people are probably like, damn, we get it, bro. Like, America doesn't have a lot of freedom. Why do you have to keep telling us that? I'm like, bro, because we keep telling other people as a copium tactic that we are the most free country in the entire world. And the longer time just keeps going on, it shows us more and more that I think for us to truly live up to that, we need to change some things within the society of the United States. And I don't think those changes are going to be made very swiftly considering how things are going currently. However, our next comment says, "I'm guessing Luxembourg hasn't spent trillions of dollars fighting wars." Oh my god.
People in the US always want to live in Europe and vice versa. Here's my hot take on this. I'm from Europe and I moved to the US 5 years ago, and seeing it from both sides is so interesting. I think it's very natural to always want something that you have not experienced yet, or you want something different. But I think there's a lot of misconceptions on both sides, what is better on what side. So I'm from the Netherlands and we're known to be a very happy and wealthy country, but that comes with a price. So in the Netherlands, you pay, if you make under 78k, 37% taxes, but if you made above 78k, you pay 52% taxes. So you give away more taxes, so you keep yourself. So many taxes on literally everything. On clothes, you pay 21%, pay taxes on your waist, on the weight of your car that you have to pay. There's so much that goes into paying taxes. Here is a lot lower than in the Netherlands. And also in America, you definitely make a lot more money. In the Netherlands, I was working as a nurse and I only got paid like I think around 30k. which here I feel like you get paid a lot more. A lot of other misconceptions are that insurance and university is free. That may be the case in Sweden if you are an actual citizen there, but for most of Europe that's not the case. Like in the Netherlands, you have to pay for university, you have to pay for insurance every month. It is a lot lower here, but they're still deductible, and it's getting worse and worse every year. It is also illegal to not have health insurance. Then on the other side, a lot of people dream about like the American dream, or they want to like move to California, and because everything is so far spread out, it's really hard if you cannot afford a car. If you can't afford to live in like a bigger city that has more work opportunities. And in the Netherlands, I think that is a little bit different, because in the Netherlands, you don't really need a car. You can cycle everywhere. You can take the train everywhere. You don't really need a car, so that saves you a lot of money every month. I think people in America are a lot nicer than in Europe. Very humbled when I go back home and I see how mean everyone is in stores, and like there's like customer service is like not a thing compared to like how that is in America. We're a lot more religious here versus in Europe. I don't know anyone that is religious in Europe, and here so many people go to church, are super religious. Everything is so religious based. Even my friend that came to visit recently, she said like, why is there literally in every store, like they have like a psalm, or they have like something that is like religion related, which is like, you don't see that in the Netherlands. Let me know if you want to hear more, because I have so many more, but I don't want to keep rambling.
Yeah, we covered a lot of these points before, but she brought up some very interesting points that do make a lot of sense. First of all, the pros of America, because we got to give America something. People are very friendly in the United States and whatnot, right? Another thing she brought up that I thought was pretty interesting is people desiring to live in Los Angeles. I have never seen so many people. Okay, I have never seen so many people, specifically from Europe, want to live in Los Angeles in my entire life. I'm like, whoa, I wasn't even clocking that Los Angeles was that desirable of a place to live. Because in America, I'm like, bro, like in my head at least, there's a lot of taxes to pay in California. Everything is expensive. It's beautiful, don't get me wrong, but oh my God, it is expensive out there. So I was always kind of curious about like why people want to flock out there. Obviously, it's iconic. It's beautiful weather out there. Things are expensive, but you will have a good time. Yeah, that being said, I mean, there's a content creator that is from Europe. He travels very often to Los Angeles and back to Germany and stuff, and his name on YouTube is German in Venice, and I was like, damn, like that's dope that like he has like it's a very unique channel. Like he makes videos about things happening in California regularly, and then he will also make videos about his experience living in Germany, and then him going to Germany doing different side quests and stuff. So it's pretty interesting. So seeing things from that perspective, I don't know, I guess kind of lines up with what I'm hearing here. The cost of living, she made a very good point about that, and I brought it up earlier. You get paid more in the United States, but you also have to pay more in the United States, if that makes sense. You get paid more to pay more, which arguably I would think households have less money to work with after their paycheck than in Europe after their paycheck. Now, there are some things in Europe, like I took a little dig at you guys' gas prices earlier, that are way more expensive than in America, but then literally everything else in America is far more expensive. And just commuting is one of the many things, but let's say we beat you guys at least on the commuting aspect when it comes to cars. When it comes to trains, planes, and everything in between, minus cars, yeah, you guys have us beat 100%. I mean, it's very expensive for us to get around, let alone, I keep talking about it, and I'm gonna beat this into the ground like a dead horse, healthcare, education. I understand when she said that the misconception that education is free. Well, it's still affordable, right? If you have to pay anything in Europe, it is still affordable. It's not affordable in the United States. Student debt is common for the people that do go to college. It's a very common thing. $30,000+ in debt. That's not a common thing in Europe. I don't think people are swimming in student debt when they go to university. So I think that's the biggest point that is being made between the two. But she is right. There are pros and cons to living in both areas. Currently, right now, I mean, like I said, there's some growing pains happening in Europe, and there's some growing pains happening in America currently. So you basically have to pick your poison. What do you prefer more? And honestly, as I get older, I'm like, Europe looking kind of nice. I ain't gonna hold you. But there are some aspects of America that I do like. I mean, there's not as much paperwork you have to do when it comes to purchasing a house and making big business deals and plans and whatnot. So things work better in your favor on that front. But then, in Europe, again, quality quality of life a lot better. Again, it's what you desire. It's what you prefer. But let's go ahead and get into these comments before I ramble too much more. Our first comment says, Southern Europe is great to retire to, but the struggle to make a decent wage is very real. Money changes everything. For instance, I saved up a bunch of money when I went to what people were telling me was overrated. They're like, Oktoberfest is overrated. Don't do it. Don't go to I know that's not Southern Europe, by the way. I'm just saying, like, in general, people are like, oh yeah, this experience is too expensive. Just like I was just saying, Los Angeles is too expensive. But if people save enough money to go on these trips and have fun, then yeah, they're going to want to live in those areas. And there's tons of Europeans I've met that have decided to buy property and live in the United States because they had such a great time. And I commend them for that. They save the money. They don't have to go through the same struggles many Americans have to go through. And also, they get covered by their own health insurance plan in their respective country, which is dope. So in the same breath, I saved a lot of money myself, and I wound up traveling to Germany and indulging in things that cost a lot of money because I just saved for that occasion and I was ready to do those things. I'm like, okay, cool. Oktoberfest, expensive. It costs like 12 euro for one mass, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, I will buy that shit. I don't care. I want to have the time of my life. And I did. I loved it, loved it. It's unfortunate that I was not able to attend this year, but next year, hopefully. Next year, part 2. So I think it really boils down to preference and what your bank account can handle and whatnot when it comes to places that you prefer to live in. And then, of course, like the climate. Do you feel safe in that environment? Is it feasible to raise a family? And what does that environment align with in your values?